Food and weight obsession can be exhausting. Losing weight, gaining weight, dieting, feeling like a failure because you missed a workout, binged, overate, or gained all the weight back. The cycle is endless and it can be maddening. But I'm here to say you can stop the mental madness. You can take back control of your food behaviors, but you have to face your fears, you have to ask for help, and make a change. I am Leslie M. Thornton, permanent weight loss coach from hpwl.co. This is Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, and I know you can make this happen. On this podcast, you will hear how to stop the mental madness, love your body, trust your food decisions so you can create a life of happiness, freedom, and inner peace. Welcome to the Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss podcast. Today we have with us Michelle Chalfant. How are you, Michelle? Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm wonderful. Thank you.
Excited for this conversation. Michelle and I met recently at an event and found out we have a lot of alignment in what we teach and what we care about for human beings, for, learning how to live better lives and be happy and have all of that good self-love going on and how to actually do it practically, which I'm excited to get into today because it's like, how do we actually do it? Before we get into our conversation, though, I just want to properly introduce Michelle. So she is a licensed therapist and a holistic life coach, empowering individuals to get unstuck and awaken to their true selves. She's the creator of the Adult Chair model. Michelle merges simple psychology with grounded spirituality into a powerful framework for personal transformation. Her podcast, The Adult Chair, with more than 10 million downloads, offers relatable insights and practical tools for overcoming common struggles and challenges. Michelle also leads immersive events, courses, the Academy of Awakening membership, and a coaching certification program to help people transform their lives and the lives of others. She and her work have been featured in the New York Times, People, Well and Good, and Huffington Post, among others. So hi, welcome again. So happy that you're here. Thanks for the work that you do in the world. And one of the reasons I love to bring guests on, as I was sharing with you, Michelle, before we started today, is just because on top of Hypnosis for Permanent Weight Loss, or I should say probably underneath the weight loss journey for people, is usually all of the hard things, the challenging things, the emotional things, as well as that lack of self-belief, the lack of feeling worthy, and the need for more empowerment. One of my favorite things I learned was that unlike like alcohol or drug addiction, food addiction is completely different, because where alcoholics or drug addicts need disempowerment to like actually save their lives and save those of others, people who deal with food, body, and weight challenges actually need empowerment and to feel more confident. So I love to bring on women like Michelle to give women, especially, that spark of empowerment, to know that outside of our, challenges or lifetime struggles, whether it's weight loss or anything else, there can be a whole different, amazing, incredible future. So I'm super excited for you to be able to share that story. And yeah, would love to hear like how you started doing what you did today. Was there a major like before and after? That would be helpful to hear. Would love to know.
Oh my gosh. And I can weave in my own weight loss and weight gain.
Oh, great.
I don't know what you want me to weave
Love
in,
it.
but I
Yeah,
can.
please. The more, if you can weave in the weight loss, that will help the audience for sure.
It was like gosh, I went through so many different things. And as I look back on it, as I reflect right now, food was my way to numb out. And I learned it as like a very, very small child. There's a lot of chaos. I'm Italian from actually Rochester, New York. So I say I'm Italian because anyone that's Italian knows like we're together with everybody all the time. We lived in a home on a lake every summer with grandma, uncle, mom, dad, sister, plus uncles from down the lake were over. I mean, it was just like everyone was enmeshed and together all the time. So there were a lot of things that were overwhelming. There was a lot of drinking, more from my extended family, honestly, than than my mom and my dad. But it was just overwhelming. My mother or my uncle, who was my dad's twin, fought with my mother. My uncle hated my mom. So to live under that roof with all of that animosity and hatred, my my father didn't stop it. There was just so much. And here I am, this little kid who's wide open. I'm an empath. I'm feeling everything. And I'm thinking, who's going to stop this chaos? And I found food. Honestly, when I was a little girl, I remember being around probably 6 or 7 years old. And I remember I was very drawn to carbs. It was like pizza, pasta, popcorn, and potatoes. Those are my four P's that I always would go towards. So, yeah, so I had a lot of different struggles from that perspective when I was growing up, but that wasn't the main struggle. It was also as I got older and I learned a lot more. I went from food, then of course I did some alcohol and drugs in high school and college, but the food has always been something that has been a part of my life as far as I know. Hold on a second, you don't need to eat that. Let's get mindful. So I've done a lot of work around that. I went through a little bit of anorexia in college and then also um binging, the whole thing with food. It just became like almost a friend to me. It was the one quote unquote friend that was able to listen to me, that could numb me out, that was always there for me. It was my go-to kind of thing. So in addition to that, um,
And
there
thank
was
you for
low
sharing
self.
all that. Really appreciate
Yeah.
that. That helps people.
Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. There was low self-worth as I learned, as I grew up, I went to college, I became a therapist. I was like, oh, wait, I have low self-worth. Who knew? I was functionally depressed. I had a boyfriend, I had friends, I went out on the weekends, but inside I hated myself. Um, so I went through quite a journey and it was most of my life. And I'm now 56. So even saying that out loud, I'm like, wait, how'd that happen so fast? But I went through a lot in my 20s and even my 30s, and I did a lot of transformational work on my own, groups, all that kind of thing. So what I learned a lot about, which we were talking about prior to the show today, was really how do we love ourselves and what is self-worth even mean? And how do I do that if I'm codependent? Like I can't do that. I learned to take care of everybody around me. And how do you do all those things? So what I found growing up when I did, and I say that because times are different now for someone that's your age versus my age. It's like we didn't have the internet, we had a library. We didn't have a cell phone. When I was in my 20s. So I was literally. Thank God I had what I call guardian angels that came into my life that were in physical human form that would say, "Have you read this book? Hey, read this book." And I was very spiritual my whole life too. I always felt like, wait, there's got to be something else. I know I have spirit guys. I can feel these beings around me. Like, what do you do with all this stuff? There was so much going on when I was growing up. Let me just tell you. So that led me to a path of doing a lot of personal work, like I said. And what I found was over and over again, people would say, you need to learn how to love yourself. I'm like, but how the hell do you do that? I don't know how
Right.
to do that.
Yes.
Yes, I understand that because the voices inside of me, they hate me. They're telling me I'm horrible. In fact, there was a tagline I had. I was damaged goods. That was just how I felt. I'm so damaged. And yes, we can call it shame, but that didn't even fit with me exactly. I just felt damaged. And how am I
Mhm.
supposed to fix the inside? So I
And can I
became
pause you
really,
for 1 second? Because I love everything you're sharing.
yeah, please.
Was there that awareness of, because oftentimes what I coach people through is how the energy or the emotions that we're feeling, it actually has those voices of like, so I heard you say it wasn't shame, but it was like, I'm damaged. Could you actually hear yourself saying that? Or was it through your doing personal development or whatever that helped you to see
Yeah.
component?
I had voices, honestly.
Mm.
It was a feeling for sure. But I also, as you're saying that, I have a vivid memory. I was a freshman in college and I was sitting in my dorm room and my roommates had all gone home for the weekend. And I was sitting by myself at night. It was like a Friday or Saturday night or something because nobody was in the room with me and it was dark and I think I was just watching a movie. And and I remember hearing those voices like, you're such a loser. Like, so what if your friends are gone? Don't you have any other friends? It was like all that. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's something wrong with me. Even though I had other friends, I did outside of my roommates. I had chosen to stay home that night. I was tired or whatever. But I actually heard those voices and I would get a visual. I'm very, very visual. So I'd get a visual of like a UPS box that's delivered at Christmas, but it got lost and it went around the world. So by the time it lands on your front door, It's like damaged, like holes in it, the packing tape's coming off. That's how I actually had a visual. That's what I carried with me. So
Wow.
that's what I felt like on the inside.
Hmm. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And what really hit me, I remember what put me over the edge was I was getting married. I was 29 and I was in a hotel room. My husband was at a job interview in Columbia, South Carolina. I remember I was sitting in this hotel room waiting for him to come back from his interview. And I was watching Oprah. That was when she was back on TV every day at 4 o'clock, I think it was.
I
And she
remember.
had this is before Dr. Phil's show. So Dr. Phil was on with her on her show. And I'm watching this and they called someone in the audience up. And I said, oh, this is going to be good. Because I loved that was my line of work. I loved watching that kind of work. So he's working with this woman and it sounded so much like myself. I was like, oh my God, it's me. And Dr. Phil goes, well, I know what's wrong with you, so and so, to this lady. And he goes, you don't know how to love yourself. And Oprah goes, yeah, you need to love yourself. That's the whole problem. And I remember I was laying on the bed, like, with my back up against the wall. And I went to the edge of the bed and I'm like, here we go. Dr. Phil's going to tell me how to do it.
Yes.
And I
Hmm.
was like, here we go. And he goes, all right, well, thanks so much for coming on the stage. I was like, and
Wow. Flop.
something inside of
Mhm.
me, I felt like my soul was like knocking me, going, you do it, you figure it out. And I
Cool.
literally was overtaken by this just knowing like you're going to learn how to do this for yourself. And then you need to get out in the world and teach other people how to do this. And I did.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yes, and you did. Oh
And
my
I
God, I love
did.
it so much. And I was sharing with you in the beginning how when I first started the business, 2000, whatever, 15, 14, the tagline was love yourself to freedom. And
Yes.
it's just like it's everything. So I'm sure so many people can relate to what you're saying. So would love to
Yes.
hear how is the how to? Like
Yeah. So the
what
how
did you do?
to,
Mhm.
I love that. And I love, and when you say freedom, it's like, it really is freedom. When you can learn how to love yourself, it is freedom.
Yes, it is.
So I'm going to make a long story short, but so what I did was of course I did I am a therapist. I was always more of a coach, honestly. And I love what I did. I was also always very spiritual. Like I said, like I always absolutely believed in God, but I called it God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it. I believed in angels and spirit guides and I could feel them around me and I knew I was feeling guided or being guided. So I was very connected to that world, but also very connected to how do I help people? That's why what I do, people say, is simple psychology meets grounded spirituality. So I take everything and break it way down so people can understand it in bite-sized pieces. But I went through a lot of my own personal work, but along the way, I saw clients for probably 20 years. I don't see clients individually anymore. I do a lot of other things instead in groups with people. But something that occurred to me over and over and over again was again my issue. People don't know how to love themselves. I had a lot of codependents that showed up. I had a lot of people with anxiety, a lot of people that had low self-worth. It was all my stuff. And they were perfect reflections of who I was. So after many years of working with different mentors and teachers, and honestly, my greatest teachers were my clients.
Mhm.
Excuse me. So what I did was I cobbled together this model that taught people exactly that. How do we love ourselves? So it's called the adult chair. And again, many mentors contributed to this, but I added my own flavor to it. So what happens is our life is broken up into three distinct phases. We've got phase one is called the child or the child chair. That's what happens from the ages of 0 to 6. That's where we learn all about emotions, our needs. I mean, how many adults do you work with that are like, I don't know what my needs are. Do I have needs?
Mhm.
Yes.
So many.
We just
Mhm.
have turned them off.
Mhm.
This is where vulnerability sits, intimacy. This is where your passion sits. I've worked with
Mhm.
so many people that say, I don't know what to do. What's my purpose? Guess what? It has so much to do with what happened from 0 to 6. And the great news is we can reactivate that using the inner child and working with the inner child. This was probably the most beautiful work I did over the course of so many years, 20 some years. So that's phase one that happens from 0 to 6. The other thing that happens, which is insane to me, this is where the roadmap is developed for the rest of our lives
Yes.
until we update it.
Yeah.
So I don't care how old you are today, even if you're 75 or 60 or 40 or 20, you're living off of a roadmap, meaning all of your decisions and choices and beliefs were formed when you were 0 to 6.
Yep.
So if you don't like the reality that you're living in, you got to go in and update the roadmap. It's no different than when we update our phone, right? You got to
Mm.
update your phone, update your computer. So anyway, so that's phase 1. It's called the child phase or the child chair. Phase 2 is called the adolescent. That goes from 7 to 24. And that's adolescence. So it's pre-adolescence, adolescence, post-adolescence. This is the development of the ego. This is where we really start separating from the true self. And we think we are fill in the blank. Hi, I'm Michelle, but I'm a great athlete, or I'm a ballerina, or I'm a whatever. But we really learn when we're children to become who other people want us to be, so we're accepted and loved. And when we hit the age of 7 and we go into school, it amplifies. It's like, oh, I really got to become who they want me to be in that friend group. So I need to abandon my true self even more. So this is during this phase as we really learn a lot about who we are not, honestly. But this is where we learn to live in the past and the future. We don't live in the moment from the adolescent chair. It's not a bad chair because we really need the ego. We need the
Mhm.
ego structure to survive as humans. But what we don't need is an overblown ego or an ego that's out of balance. This is the part of us that can fall into victim, that's the people pleaser, that's the codependent, that is, you fill in the blank. We develop these identities in order to live and survive and to feel accepted and loved. Now, I want to just define what an ego is, because the ego is, when I say an overblown ego, people automatically think, well, that's not me. I'm not a big show off, and I'm not bragging and driving a big car and all this stuff and telling everyone how much money I make and how great I am. Yes, that is a big ego. However, the ego's job is to help us to survive
Mhm.
on this planet. It's based in fear, and it pushes us to become who others want us to be. So, and to be safe. More than anything, it's
Mhm.
here to help us to remain safe so we can stay alive.
Yes.
So the wallflower, or the girl or the man, whomever it is, that learns to be very quiet, that learns to not speak up, that learns to, stay home because it's safer. That's also a big ego. We all have big egos because our egos are here to keep us safe and alive and to help us to survive in this world. So it's not just this, big inflated persona. It can also be someone that's ultra quiet, that's afraid to put themselves out in the world. The
Mhm.
fact is most of us have something that's out of balance in that department, and it's okay. We've gotten this far. We can change it. And we change it through the next phase, which is learning how to live in what I call the adult chair. So the adult chair develops from the age of 25 on. That's when that prefrontal cortex really comes online, when we're really divinely inspired, if we're open to that. And this is the key. We have models that modeled for us what healthy adults look like. And a
Mhm.
healthy adult looks like someone that lives in the moment, can process their emotions, sets healthy boundaries, is empowered, is strong, is able to wait patiently, that trusts, all of these beautiful things. Now, most of us did not have role models that lived like that.
Mhm.
Um, some of us had some of those qualities. I've never met anyone in 25 years of working with people that had all of that and that clearly just slid right into their adult chair, no problem. So what happens is we stay in this adolescent chair on the inside, but we take on this costume of an adult,
Yes. I
right?
see it
So
all
the
the time.
Yep,
Yes.
right? We
Yes.
just do. We just do. And it's
Mhm.
okay. There's
Yeah,
no
it is
blame or
okay.
shame or
Not at
judgment. We're all
all.
doing our best, and every human goes through this. So
Mhm.
the adult chair, though, model is all about teaching people how to live in this healthy adult chair self. We all can go there. We all can get in there. That's what I taught people how to do for many, many, many years. I still do with the podcast, the Adult Chair Podcast. It's like, how do you teach people to get into that chair? I've got it. I talk about 5 pillars that we go through. The 5 pillars of being a healthy adult, things like feeling your emotions. We
Mhm.
learn how to navigate triggers. We learn how to have self compassion. We learn to take responsibility for our lives. And then we also learn how to set healthy boundaries. And
Mhm.
self compassion is key, but even more than self compassion is all these 5 pillars help us to cultivate self love. Self love is not something we can flip on overnight and say, okay, I have self love today. It's something that we build till the day we die. So that's the adult chair in a nutshell. And
I
what I
love
do
it
now
so
is
much. Mhm.
I teach like live events around this model. I do a lot even more now with it though. So it's not just even living in your adult, it's also learning how to awaken to our true self. So now I have a new membership called the Academy of Awakening. I also have the adult chair coaching program so anyway, so that's who I am today. I do a
Love
lot of things.
it.
I
Thank you
do a
for
lot.
sharing
And I have
that.
an
And I'm
adult
just
chair book
like
coming out
so
next
much
year.
more, yep, knowing exactly why we connected. I'm like, oh my gosh, the alignment is wild. So a couple of things. There's one story I want to share that I think will highlight for people of like everything that you just talked about, getting stuck in the adolescent chair or whatever. And I could even see this for myself. So for anyone listening, it's like you can even look at your weight loss journey story if you have one and think back to like what was the moment that you really got hyper fixated on your weight or whatever. And when I unpack this with clients, and I'll share one specific client was talking about like how she remembers that she was feeling depressed and she was scared to tell her mom that she was depressed. This was also very similar to my story. And so she goes and she lets her mom know that she was depressed. And her mom was just like, there's no such thing as depression, like go
Oh,
away kind of thing. Right.
yeah.
And so what I saw when I was coaching her was that she was unable to receive the coaching that would allow her to get into the adult chair, if you will.
Oh,
And it was because this little girl was still stuck banging on the door for mom to actually validate her feelings and her experience. So it was too much she could not receive anything beyond that because unless that need gets met, she was staying stuck. So once we uncovered that, she was able to release some emotions, and able to receive the coaching. And the main thing being like, okay, so consider that your whole life, every single time that you're hyper focused on your weight, like that's actually your little girl who is actually saying, can someone validate my feelings? So the reason why weight loss isn't the answer and you keep yo-yo dieting your whole life and not able to ever stop thinking about this is because that's not actually the issue. This little girl needs your love and attention, and consider your family as a dry well. They're not able to provide you those, that emotional validation. They just don't have that. So now the opportunity is to become your own well, right? Through places like reparenting, which I heard you have something awesome for the audience for that.
mhm.
And ever since then, it's just been like she's been able to be at peace, patient, compassionate with herself, accepting. It was like from that moment forward. And can't tell you, I've been in, hundreds of seminars that's all like conscious coaching and, people getting coached live. And it's like you can literally see, like, even the way people present, like, some of them, they'll be adults, but they might be dressed a little bit more youthful or something. And like the moment that they share about will be like they'll be matching the outfit of themselves at that time. Like
Wow.
they present as that, and it's like because you're still stuck there,
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they share it, they get like out of that, and then like you see their face change, like they become like and it's just like and it's just like my favorite thing ever to just like help people like uncover those different places of getting stuck. But in neurolinguistic program, we talk about those different phases, of like the first stages of like being more hypnotic, of like you're literally just a sponge kind of
Yeah.
receiving and getting the blueprint for what your whole life is going to be. And then, teenager stage of being kind of like modeling after what you're seeing and kind of like trying to just do what you others see, right? And then being able, actually, we talk about in the business phase of actually learning like business skills and whatever is like in your
Mhm.
30s or whatever, and then just like, getting all the way to your authentic self and adult chair self, etc. So just love all the parallels and like what you're saying specifically around, first of all, I'm a nurse by trade. So like getting my hands dirty and being like, how do I actually do it? And let me get in there and do it. Like I really pride myself in the program that we have because it's like we're getting in there and getting our hands dirty and actually doing how you can create that experience of self-love in your own body. And it does not happen overnight, but like the end result is definitely 100% worth it. But it's like we kind of need to A, become aware of what's going on, right?
Mhm.
B, have the emotional support to actually know how to release, the triggers and whatever is coming up. Boundaries is a huge one.
Huge.
Um, Yeah, and then also just the hypnosis we add in and all of those different aspects to just support people in getting there. So, woo, I just love everything that you're sharing. Thank you for that. So what I'm curious changes for your clients when they go from, the adolescent chair to the adult chair? Like, is there any stories that you can share of what
Mm.
you witness? I'm sure there's hundreds, but any coming to mind?
Gosh, yeah, I'm thinking about people that I've worked with just in the coaching program. Like I do a lot of stage work when I'm like doing a live event. I'll be up on a big stage and I put mics on everybody and we get up there and it's so fun to turn around because typically my back is to the audience and be working with someone up on a stage. And then when I turn around, like everybody's crying, but I'll say, did you guys all see how their whole face just changed when they just did this work in 15 minutes, in 30 minutes, whatever it might be that we did? They're like, yeah, that was so good and so fun.
Could
But
never
that's
be
one
the
thing that,
same again. Like, once you uncover those things, it's
oh,
like you can't unlearn what you've learned, what you right? And that's the thing about coaching is, like, we're helping you see what you don't know that you don't know,
exactly. But man, they
but once you see
change.
it, you can't unsee it. Even if you don't
Oh,
remember exactly every detail, it's like you can't go back.
you cannot go back. I mean,
Mhm.
these
Mhm.
people, oh my God. And when I think about what was your question? Like, what are some stories about how people have changed? Like,
Yeah.
something that happens. So I created the adult chair coaching certification program. So we have a master program and a regular program. And one thing that I mean, I harp on it. They must do personal work, and we do a lot of personal work within the program. So I'm thinking there that's the most recent because I haven't seen clients in 4 years. But
Mhm, mhm.
oh my God, seeing these people, and when I even work with them, I'm like, "Oh my God," and then we just graduated our last 2 classes, and I'm like, "These people are completely transformed." People have taken like, one of our guys in the program, like, he was a professor for 30 years. He literally has, like, quit his job, and he's like, "No, I just wanna be a full-time coach." I'm like, "What?" Like, wow. Like, what I see it that happens with people
Mhm.
more than anything is they become what I call soul aligned.
Yeah.
They start tapping into and touching into, and even prior to this coaching program, they start touching and tapping into their divine purpose. We all have a divine purpose, and our divine purpose doesn't even have to be a career. It could be, I'm here to be this like masterful gardener, or like this killer stay-at-home mom, or I'm going to volunteer over here, and that's my purpose. But we are able to start lining up with what it is that we're here to do. We start getting that inner pulse from the soul that goes,
Mhm.
go this way, take a right turn. Even if it doesn't make logical sense, we are so in tune with our heart space when we're in the adult and we're listening for the downloads, for the instant
Yeah.
knowings. We're way more intuitive. And it's like, oh, turn right here. Well, that's scary. And that doesn't look right. And then we do it. And it's like, whoa, holy moly, my whole life just changed for the better. So yeah, people become, I will say this in general, and I'm going to speak for, I'm going to include myself in this as well. Once we learn how to live in our adult, because when we live in our adult, we're very connected to what happens is you're very, from a somatic perspective or a body perspective, we're very connected to that child, to the inner child. And instead of following everything that comes out of our head, what I call living either chin up or chin down, we witness the thoughts. We learn to witness the thoughts that are rifling in from this adolescent chair. And we go, thank you. But we do a lot of parts work. I
Mhm.
call it
Parts.
quantum,
Yes, we just
and
did it last
I
week.
do it.
Mhm.
I do what I call quantum parts work, and I consider
Nice.
the inner child to be just one of the parts that we work with. But
Yeah.
quantum is where we do a lot of, like you talked about, we do a lot of reparenting that child part.
Mhm.
But what happens is I see people go from feeling where they might be living a life where they fall into that, what I call the seat of the victim, or they just kind of feel victim-y and why does this keep happening to me? To empowered.
Mhm.
Or they feel very, this happens all the time, less triggers.
Mhm.
Like,
Huge.
oh my God, my emotions used to be like a freaking yo-yo. I was up and down.
Mhm.
I'm so, not that we're supposed to live like this, like flat by any means. We're supposed to have this beautiful ebb and flow of emotions. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I'm feeling really happy and sometimes I'm feeling, sad, or I'm in grief. And that's part of being human. That's actually healthy. But in general, I'm so much more peaceful. And I would say that most people say that, as well as, so they learn how to feel their emotions. They live with more peace. They're not as triggered. Um, Oh, this is huge. Their relationships improve.
Mhm. That's the biggest.
Every
Yeah.
relationship, not just
Right.
their primary.
Mhm.
every relationship
Mhm.
improves.
Mhm.
Um, but they learn how to handle, if we want to just tie it in, if I can, to food, right? To addiction of food, to any sort of thing that's going on with body image, they're able to start having a deeper understanding around that, or different perspective around that. And they now have tools so they know what to do if something
Exactly.
rises up. I'm a huge believer in working with triggers. I call
Me too.
triggers are a gift. Because
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I've said that for years. Our triggers are a gift. Our triggers reveal, and I know this is a redundant statement, but I don't care. I like saying it like this: our unknown, unconscious beliefs around ourselves. Every
Mm.
time we're triggered, we got to look inside and say, what's coming up for me? What is this?
Yes.
This person just totally ticked me off. And then we ask ourselves, and it's making me feel what?
Mhm.
It's making me feel like I'm less than. That's your stuff. And I don't say this with judgment, but it's like how beautiful. It's risen up from the unknown unconscious abyss, and it's on a silver platter in front of you. You can either get mad at that person in front of you, or you can claim it, own it, and work with it and process it and
Mm.
transform it.
Wow. I love it.
Yeah.
And I love having that higher perspective of all the work that we're doing, even in our program, of being like getting into the adult chair. Cause I had a
Mhm.
coach one time that talked about like it's about raising your emotional threshold of what you
Yes.
can actually take. Cause it's like being alive as a human being, it's an emotional journey. There's constant things that are out of our control and up and down. But it's if you can master your emotionality, right? And raise that threshold of what you can handle. And by using things like this, seeing things with that different perspective of how is this a gift and happening for me, it's like, then life starts to get really fun because you get that anything that feels not great or heavy in your life is something that's actually in the way,
Totally.
of, and is the gift that if you, look at it and whatever can give you that access to the freedom. It's
100%. I
it's so,
love that.
so, so good. Um, I had a client that I was just talking to before this podcast, and it's like you start to unravel the thread. She was like, "This process has not been easy, but I'm definitely growing." And the thing is like everybody starts at a different place, but it's like, and then one thing can kind of unpack the next and the next, and
Mhm.
it takes as long as it takes, for each person, depending on, where you're at in your healing journey or your just self development journey. But, getting that there can be that challenging part where it's like, it seems like everything's kind of falling apart
Mhm.
before it can actually come together. The storm before the calm, if you will. But, it's like as we change and increase our emotional thresholds, to be able to handle more and starting to like, in order to get to that space, right? See triggers and understand our part in it and da 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 da. It's
Mhm.
like relationships naturally change. You start to naturally be like, "Ooh, I no longer have tolerance for that human being in my life anymore." So sometimes things can get a little bit harder before they get easier. But what
Oh,
I invite my
yes.
clients to look at is like, even though it's painful, and we're going to equip you with the tools to deal with the heavy emotions and pain, that you're feeling as these harder things are happening, like know that this is actually a good sign. Like the fact that you're annoyed by
Mhm.
anyone talking about dieting is actually a sign that you're changing because you're, rejecting that previous version of yourself that you couldn't see before you were just chiming right in with them to talk about dieting. And now you're aggravated. And even though that's uncomfortable, that's healthy that to see like that evolution. And how can we simultaneously accept others to be exactly where they are on their path as well? Again, just like the full freedom effect, but exactly what you're saying, like getting into the authentic self, and aligning for that soul alignment, right? I heard a podcast recently. I was talking about like the number one best way that human beings can spend their time is to actually do the work to understand themselves.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
outside of that, it's like we're constantly just like at the effect of and making random decisions, and we wonder why we're not happy. And it's like because we have no idea who we are, because you
Exactly.
haven't unpacked it all, you haven't started unraveling the stuff. And I also wanted to circle back on what you're talking about the ego, and
Mhm.
how it's important, keeps us safe, all that kind of stuff. And I think parts work, at least the way I do it, is points to this very much of where I heard a coach one time say, like, the number one killer of transformation is ego judging ego.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
this is what the number one place where I see clients get stuck is they're so smart right? And so they have a level of self-awareness and they're like, well, I know I shouldn't do that. And da, 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 but then I know I shouldn't be shooting myself either. And it's just like that direct battle is why we can't like get past this. So I think, also point to the growth mindset and like you're saying, the self-compassion of
Mm-hmm.
just being like, okay, the facts are I ate this and then I felt guilt and shame. And that felt bad, like, period. Now, from this
Period.
space, let's not add all of the other judgments to it that the parts are doing, right? But let's actually unpack it and see what we can't learn from it so that we can be better next time. But
Very true.
part of
Very
becoming
true.
an adult. I love that. Perfect. Yes. And I heard, speaking of parts work and reparenting and all that good stuff, you have something that you'd like to share
Yeah.
with the audience
Um,
today. And yeah, tell us how we can find you and all the different things.
Yeah, for sure. Because parts work has been probably, I think, something that, and I think you'll agree based on what you're saying as well with your own work. To me, and I do parts work in my own way. A lot of people say, "Are you Dick Schwartz trained?" I'm like, "No, I've been doing
Mm,
parts work for 20 years." Like, no, no, no. I've always done more spiritual sort of parts work where I've called it kind of a quantum parts work because we're working with, again, we're going into different timelines. Honestly, we're
mhm,
going back in time, but we jump. I don't spend like a therapist. When I was a therapist, I was like, I never did this, but a lot of therapists will spend like years when you were 3 years old. It's like, no, 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 no. In one session, we springboard back and then we come back to the future, into the present day reality, right?
mhm,
So,
100%.
but we go back and we do the repair, whether
Mhm.
it's reparenting or something else that that little kid needed, and then we come back to the present moment. So, parts work, I've done just tons of it with myself and with clients, and that to me has been probably the most game changer of tools with clients and myself. So,
Yeah, and I'm
anyway,
curious, just on that note, if you've ever seen this, because I've also had clients who have been taught parts work
yeah,
and they come into the program and then I can tell very clearly that they've been taught it because they're speaking in parts. Well, part of me is saying this, and then, well,
yeah,
that's probably my judger part is saying this. And then their transformation, because I think it's a journey, right? It's like we need to unblend those parts and get them separated, right? And see, like,
mhm,
okay, judger part, critical part, indulger part,
yeah,
victim part, like all the parts.
yeah,
And so there can be helpful so that when you're like in all the emotionality, you can be like, oh, that's not me. That's not me. Let me name it. Let me separate from it. Let me, right, get free from this. But then you don't want to stay there for the rest of your life. Like you don't want to stay in like, oh, all these parts. Cause then it's like, oh, what do I do with all these parts? Right.
yeah,
There's the integration then next of like, so I remember when I learned parts, it was, kind of like, okay, that's helpful to go out here. But then it was through emotional mastery, actually, of me actually
mhm,
feeling through the emotions that allowed for
mhm,
the integration. In addition to that, me making a lot of mistakes and
mhm,
learning from each one to build the trust in myself of being like, and the trust in the parts. So like, ooh, when I indulge, I trust that that's meant for me. When I'm critical, okay, well, what do I want to do with that? Right? But
yeah,
none of it's wrong, none of it's bad. I don't really see it separate. It's just like it's all me.
yes,
And like I
yes,
have fun dancing with all aspects of me,
yeah,
And like I know what to do with all aspects of me. I know where it's helpful and I know when it gets unhelpful, right?
mhm,
Like I know like and that's just like, yeah, again, pointing to the freedom and like that
totally.
self-love of being like all aspects are awesome.
They are. You're
I
so
get
right.
where they've all come from and like the unhealthy family dynamics or the strong family dynamics or whatever, but like, ooh, that all led to me. So anyway, I was just curious if you ever see people well, it's been a while since you've seen clients, but if you remember, like people get stuck in parts too. And it's like, we don't want people to stay
Yeah.
too in that. There's like the integration and full self.
The I totally agree with you on the integration. Something that I always say around parts is that we we see that when we're using this adult chair model, you think about your adult, like if you're going into a business meeting and you're working for AT&T, let's just say, or some big company. There's the CEO is at the head of the table, and you got this long conference table with like 50 people sitting at it, right? The CEO should be me in my adult chair at the end. I'm the one at the end, and everyone else at the conference table, those are all my parts. The
Yes.
parts are not bad. I mean, they're all trying so hard to keep us safe, to keep us alive, to guide us well, to help us to fit in, and all these things. So, when we start working with those parts and then we let them know and give them um I don't want to say, how do I say this? Give them an experience
Mhm.
of me leading the way. And that's the thing. These parts are so unconscious. We have to, a
Mhm.
lot of times when I work with people, I'll say, hey, I want you to notice that so-and-so, if I were working with you, I'd say, Leslie, I mean, my gosh, she has her own business. She has her own podcast. Do you know that? And so often the parts are like, what? No,
Yes,
I thought she was
exactly.
7. No, no,
That's
no. She's
right.
actually not 7.
Mhm.
So right there, the part starts to transform.
Yes,
And
correct.
then I'll say, can you just watch her? Just keep an eye on her because she's actually doing a great job. She's really successful and whatever, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
And those parts then they get quieter. Now, it's not to
Mhm.
say that they don't chime in, but then when they chime in the future, if they chime in, it's quiet. And
Yeah.
then we know exactly what to do with them. And then that alone starts to transform them because I still, in all the parts work I've done, they'll still pop in, but I love to go for walks in the morning and I'll check in with my inner child. She'll be skipping alongside of me. For some reason, for me, my 5-year-old always shows up. Sometimes I get a baby, sometimes I get a 2-year-old, but it's my 5-year-old or I'm going to say 90% of the time. So working with her is just such a game changer it's like a domino effect, isn't it? Like the rest of our lives. It's like when that younger version of self is healthy and happy and in balance, my adult life mirrors that.
Mm, I love that so much. And a big part of our
Right.
program is like bringing back in the joy and like actually what activities did you
Yes.
enjoy doing as a kid? And like, let's learn from those things. Do we need to adapt it
Yeah.
to the adult version now? Or do you want to do that same activity again and like actually incorporate that stuff? And you're right, just even imagining giving those activities to your inner child can also create that experience within yourself.
Totally.
Just so, so powerful. And I love going back to what you're saying about the parts work is like we actually do an activity that's just like it's interviewing the part. So I actually have my client like spin around in the chair and come back and
Yes.
actually embody that part and say
Yes.
like, hello, how long have you been part of this person's life? It's like, oh, what are you afraid is going to happen if you're not always criticizing her? And it's like, oh, well, other people are going to criticize her. It's like, oh, so you've been trying to help her avoid the emotional pain of other people criticizing her. And you've been doing that by criticizing her. And then I asked them, so then I'm curious, like when you're criticizing her, how do you notice that's affecting her? So then the client has to think about it. It's like, oh,
Mm.
well, she's upset, she overeats, she's this, she's that. It's like, okay, so can you see that even though you have good intentions for her, what you're doing is actually hurting her? And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, are you open to a different way that will work better for your relationship? And they got this openness. Yes. Okay, well, let's talk about it. How can so and so make you, as the critical part, feel safer? Oh, well, if she showed me regularly that she actually was doing a good job, right? So then the coaching, action will be, well, journal every day about how you're doing a good job, right? And then the other, it's like, okay, so if she did that, would you be able to back off a little bit? Yeah, right. And anyway, so the client is just left. So then I circle them back again and then them being able is like, oh, I just interviewed your self-critical part. They've actually been trying to help you like this, that, and the other thing. They're willing to blah, blah, blah. If you're willing to do this. And then it's like holding them accountable to that action. So it's so powerful to actually
So
get that,
powerful.
like, because, for everyone listening, like when you're just making that wrong and you're stuffing it down and
Yep.
you have no awareness that, what's in the shadow. Cause I think we're also pointing to shadow work of just anything that you
Mm-hmm.
can't see. Right, but when you
Yep.
bring it into the conscious, you shine the light on it, you can see it, you're free from it. So, it's just, like, such a huge aspect. I'm just
It's
so
such
happy.
beautiful. I mean, such beautiful work. I
We must have,
agree.
like, been synced up at a different time and because it's
Different
just, like,
timelines.
everything you're talking about is, like, we're teaching the same stuff, and it's so awesome. I, interviewed a gastric bypass surgeon in the past, and she actually stopped giving gastric bypass surgeries to people until they did a program like one of ours, because she found
Wow.
that they were just gaining the weight back because they had not done exactly what we were talking about. They were not in the adult chair, they were not
No,
emotionally mastering their emotion, like boundaries. There's
that's
three
the thing.
prerequisites for change that we talk about in neurolinguistic programming. It's like you've got to do the subconscious work. You've
Yep.
got to also take action, do something different than what you're doing, and then you have to set boundaries. Change will not
Yes.
occur unless all three happen. So if you're
I
just
agree.
getting a surgery for weight loss and you're not doing any of those three things, I have had clients who have done those things. They're like, I found loopholes. I found a way to eat
Mhm.
anyway.
Mhm.
I heard
It's
of
not a
on my
quick
600
fix,
pound
right?
life.
Like
No.
we're looking for that quick fix. We want that magic pill to go, just make it happen. It's like, no, you got to do your work. You know what it
Yep.
reminds me of is when people, pointing my, my pen at you.
I love it.
It reminds
For
me
you.
of when people win the lottery. There's some crazy
Yeah.
statistic, like people win the lottery and they'll make whatever, $100 million, let's say. And they say the average years, is it 3 years? I think it is when they are right back to where they started from because they haven't learned how to manage that. It's like all their emotional stuff is going to come up around that for sure. So are
100%.
you able to step into that new version of self is what it's all about. It's really taking the
Mm.
quantum leap forward and saying, yeah, like, wait, this is who I am in the future. What do I need to do right now to show up and change that today in order to become that in the future? So
Exactly.
such good stuff.
95% of people who lose weight with diet and exercise gain it back within 5 years and
Yes.
more weight than they lost initially. It's like we cannot avoid doing this foundational work if you really
Got
want
to do
to
it.
be happy, if you want freedom, and if you don't, that's okay. It's not everybody's journey, but like if you keep beating on the same door and you're not happy with the results year after year, like listen to what we're saying because it's like the access is this.
One
It
of the
is
things
this.
I ask myself, I want to share this. I think you might share this with your people, is when I am wanting to eat, I've just learned just doing my own personal parts work, but I'll say, wait, I just ate lunch like an hour ago. And I'm like, oh, but I'm really hungry. And then I pause where if I'm standing in the middle of the kitchen, I'll pause and sometimes I close my eyes and sometimes not, but I'll ask myself, okay, hold on a second. Who's hungry?
Ooh, I like that
Who's
one.
hungry? Right.
Mhm.
Last night we were at a big dinner for my mom for her birthday, and we were all at a restaurant. And normally I don't eat gluten. Man, that everyone was raving about the bread on the table. So I had one piece of bread. I was like, okay, eat it slow. We're good. Calm down, Michelle. Like, and I'm talking to myself. And then all of a sudden I'm reaching for a second one. I said, who wants the second one? Who wants the second piece of bread? And it was like, I do. And I was like, who's I? And I'm sitting there at the dinner table at the
Nice.
restaurant and everyone's out, everyone's chit chatting. And I'm like, okay, hold on a second. We don't do well with a lot of gluten for this body. And I had this whole conversation. Yeah, but I really, really want it. I'm uncomfortable. So it was so fascinating because this part of me, it was an old part, like sort of codependent, but not exactly, but that felt responsible for my niece that was sitting down at my end of the table and the rest of
Mhm.
her family was at the other end of the table. It was so wild. And I'm like, this is so cool. And this part of me was like, I'm really stressed because anyway, my niece, she's like, I just want her to feel comfortable. I'm like, I'm talking to her. She's absolutely fine. She's not uncomfortable. She looks great,
Mhm.
actually. So all of a sudden, my desire for that second piece of
Yes.
bread, it was wild. It just went and it went down. And I said, okay, I'm good. Like I don't need two. And then my meal came. I only ate half my meal. This is big for me. So I have to share it. I think your audience of all audiences probably appreciate it. But I'm talking to myself. I'm very aware. I live in the moment. As much as I can. It's not possible to do it every second of the day. But I remember I was eating and my husband turned to me last night and he says, wow, you're like a clean your plate kind of gal. You're not eating that. And I said, nope, I am pretty full. He goes, wow, I can't believe you're not going to finish that salmon. I said, I'm saving it for lunch tomorrow. And he goes, okay, then. He goes, wow.
Mm.
I was like, yeah, this is just so I'm constantly just chatting with who's, I ask myself that question all the time. Who said that? Like inside,
Nice.
whose thought is this? Like and I
Ugh.
don't, again, it's pretty quiet inside now compared to in my 20s, but they still chime in sometimes. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
let's chit chat, everybody. Gather around the conference
100%.
table.
And
Time for a
family
conference for a
time,
meeting, right?
absolutely. I
Time for
find
a meeting,
family
everyone.
exactly, family time, and thank you for sharing. I'm sure it's helpful to so many people. Can be so, but if you do just pause and you ask, like, okay, it's like whenever it's that kind of like crazy feeling energy, just like have that. Like sometimes I call it vacuum cleaner energy. It's just like you're
Yeah,
just like wanting that second piece or whatever. It's just like, okay, wait a second, where is this vacuum cleaner feeling coming from? And it's almost always something like that of like, oh, well, they said that over there, or this happened, or feel bad for my niece or whatever it is. And it's just like, okay. And then actually addressing what that actually is, whether it's with the actual person or just with yourself. And it's just like, so now we can quiet down that vacuum cleaner energy. And
the
then from
chitter
here, we
chatter.
can make a choice. It's like, okay, now how do I feel? Do I actually want the bread? No. Or actually I do, but
Yeah.
either way, the choice is centered, it's aligned, it's empowered, it's what I want. It's not just an emotional,
Like a
craziness.
knee-jerk reaction. Oh, there it is. I got to eat it. It's like, whoa, 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 slow. Again, from my adult, I've learned to slow down, sit in the moment more. And I took a deep breath. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, hold on, let's check in. And I'm doing all of this with all this talking all around me. So
Mhm.
that's the beauty of this work. You can do it anywhere. You don't have to do it when
Mhm.
you're sitting alone or with someone in an office. I'm doing it I'm out to dinner at a restaurant. It's so loud and
Yeah.
crazy. And
I love that. I just
yeah.
thought of this thought that recently I was thinking, like, I was like, oh, I'm not a therapist. You are. But like, I was like, I feel like I kind of do like exposure therapy with clients because I actually
Mhm.
have them
Yeah.
like allow all foods, fill up your pantry with what you want. Nothing is wrong and bad. Like, because then it brings out
Yes.
these things in a way of like, well, since I put all these shoulds and rules and can'ts and this and that, and right, all the science that I know about gluten and inflammation and da 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 da, like, let me actually question all of that and decide for myself. And so it's like, yeah, just like exposing them to all the scariness, so
Yeah.
that you can actually get. And so I find that when it comes to that vacuum cleaner energy, it's like, oh, I've been here before, safe when it's around. Not I when clients are like, oh, don't bring that into my house, or it's just like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being that way. But it's like, what if there's a next level of freedom where like no matter what, if you have it or don't have it,
Yes.
you're good,
Oh,
So
so
I love
good.
it so much. Okay, we could talk all day long. So yes, what's your website? Did you tell us already? I can't remember. Adult chair.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Theadultshare.com is where you'll find everything. I've got meditations. I've got the podcast is all over, whether it be on Apple or whatever. The Adult Share podcast. Something that I wanted to offer your peeps here is I'm really excited about this. I'm doing because I love the inner child. Again, one of my favorite parts is to work with the inner child. I'm doing an inner child course. I'm offering it in October. It's $97, but for anyone that's in the Academy of Awakening membership, it's $1 for any one of your people that want to come in for 1 month and try it out. And you get the
Woo!
course. You'll just get the
Oh my
course included for
gosh.
$1.
What an
So
incredible
you just go to
gift.
the academyofawakening.com and the promo code is HEAL and it's all caps HEAL. And again, we're offering that. That's coming out to the general public in October. But if you're part of the membership, it just is included in what you get for the whole month. So you get a lot of fun stuff all month. Extra live Q&As with me. I do hot seat coaching in there. I do a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Super generous of you. Thank you so much. And love even the synchronicity of heal. My method is called the heal method, hypnosis, emotional mastery, aligned to your authentic self and learning lasting
Mm,
self-care.
I did not know. I
You
love
know what I mean? That's
that.
incredible. I
Very
love it
aligned here
so
today, Leslie. I
much.
just got to
I
say, very aligned.
know. So
Yeah.
fun talking to you. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody definitely check out Michelle's resources and thank you again for that gift. We'll put the link in the show notes. And if you're ready to get free from food, body, and weight specifically, go ahead to our website, hpwl.co, and book a call. And thank you so much again, Michelle, for being here. Look forward to
Thank
being on
you.
your podcast soon as well.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye. If you are serious about taking action on your struggle with food, body, and weight, then this is for you. Go ahead and text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232-5483. Immediately after texting that number, you will get access to our free training that will tell you why you can't figure the food, body, and weight thing out, why you can't keep weight off even after you've been successful in the past, and how to actually overcome it, including a mini hypnosis session at the end. Don't miss out. Text the word hypnosis to 855-BE-ALIVE. That's 855-232-5483.